All right, let's see. Hopefully I've got things straightened out. I apologize for whatever that was. Thanks, Twitch. All right, so let's see if I can do this. So let's zoom right in. There we go. We're going to zoom right in. My apologize, class. Okay, I want to zoom in. There we go. All right, so here I want to explain a little bit about the brush. So I'm going to draw, there's this little bristle here at the end, and then there's all of these other bristles that kind of follow along. So then we got some on this side. So we get this like paintbrush, right? And then it's all stamped into here. You get all these little bristles in here. So this here, right here, is called the tip. Just the tip. This right here, where this kind of bellows out, is what we call the belly. And then it's got this little metal piece here, which is the ferrule. Okay. So when we paint miniatures and we apply base coat, we want to stay in this area here, this tip. And what happens is when we get paint on the tip and we paint, all that paint starts to feed into the belly and it keeps that paint right into the belly. And that's how we're able to paint around it. So when you're dipping into your paints, what you really want to do is only get about a third of the brush into the paints. And we have to make sure we get the tip to show up. Because a lot of times when you have the brush, right? So you have your brush like this. You have your little guide bristle that all of these follow to make the tip. And then you have your brush here, right? When you dip this in the paint goes all over the bristles, and then you have this like little blob of paint right there on the tip. And that's what we have to wipe away. So when you wipe it away, you want to get the tip. And you'll see this when we start working on it. Hey, Talon. So that's what we want to do. We want to make sure when we're dipping the brush into the paint that, and I hope that I'm sharing this. Oh, good. I'm sharing the drawings. That's what I want to know. Okay, so when you do your thing, you want to just stay a third of the way. You don't want to go all the way to this ferrule. If you get any paint in this ferrule, then it's not coming out, and you have to wash the brush. And if you have any dry paint in the ferrule, that's when your brush, so there you go, there's the brush. We'll say this is the ferrule. That's when you have a piece of dried paint in here, and so now you'll get this two-pronged. You get like two tips on a brush. It splits, or you'll have this one hair that kind of comes way out here. So before you cut away any bristles, because that could be a guide bristle, you want to keep that guide bristle. That's what keeps the tip right there, that guide bristle. Before you cut any bristles, you want to make sure you clean it. Clean the brush. All right. So tip number one, when you're using base colors or any paint for that matter, try to keep it only a third of the way on the bristles, or less, third or less. All right. That's the first lesson. That's the brush. So the brushes that we're going to be using. So remember last week we used this this big brush here. Let me move this a little bit. We used that big brush to kind of base coat the entire miniature. Well, now we want to use a large brush that actually does have a tip to it. And we're also going to use a medium brush that has a tip to it. So this one doesn't really have a tip. This one's kind of rounded at the top. Right here, it's rounded right there at the top. But these have a tip. That means the guide bristle is there and it's ready to go. And that's what we're going to be using to base color our models. Right? So that's the use of the brush. We're only going to go a third of the way so we can get our base colors on. Now, we have a large brush with a tip and a medium brush with a tip. The question is, what brush do I use? And it all depends on the area of the model. So if I take this model, let me turn my light on so you can actually see what I'm doing. Boom. Oh my goodness, look at those drawings. They weren't there before. So if I take this model, this is one that we'll be painting. If you look, there's certain areas on him. So if I want to paint his face, obviously it's a smaller area than maybe his skirt. So you want to make sure that the tip can fit onto the piece that you're painting. And so I say the little areas get the little brush and the big areas can get the bigger brush. But it's really just the tip that you're using, so as long as the tip can make it in there, you're good. And we have to also make sure that we're getting rid of that little bobble, right? Because your paint's going to make a little bobble on the tip. You got to wipe it away so that you're always left with the tip. That's what it is. It's just the tip. How are you today, Talon? Hopefully you're doing very well. We may or may not have lurkers. We had a little hiccup at the beginning. Twitch decided to knock out on me. So I quickly restarted. Okay. So that's the brush theory for basing. And it's really a good practice all the way through. Sometimes you'll get a brush that doesn't have a belly. Those are glazed brushes. Those are liner brushes. You're having trouble hearing me? Let me see what I'm using for a mic then. How about now? Does that work? The mic is warbly. Let's see. Maybe if I do this. Let's see. Maybe I have a couple things open that I probably shouldn't. Am I normally warbly? It's a weird distortion on my low notes. Let me see if I can raise it. Well, I don't want to raise the decibels too much because that would mean. Like talking with a vibration in your throat. Ooh. Let's exit out of here. I wonder if something happened when I restarted. Hmm. Well, let's see. We only got 2 viewers in here. I think you're one of them, and I think the bot's the other one. So I wonder if I should restart OBS. Close your mic and turn it back on. All right, let's see. So this is the laptop mic. And let me see if I can use... Let's see if I can use the webcam mic again. All right, so now we're back to the webcam mic. Does that work? Or am I still garbly? Okay. Cool. Maybe I just have to talk. Maybe I'm not talking at the mic. But even though that was garbly, hopefully everybody could hear what I was saying about the brush. We want to stay on the top third of the brush, and we want to wipe away the little bubble of paint. All right. So that's that. And we'll figure out which brush we're going to use. We're going to either use the big brush or the small brush, depending on the area of the miniature. Little areas get the little brush, and big areas get the big brush. And you only do that because of the paint amount that it holds. The belly, remember that the belly, right here, the belly of the brush holds the paint. So larger areas, you probably want more paint in the belly than you'll get in a smaller brush. Okay, so for the paints that we're going to use today is the same paints we used last week, which was all the dry brushing. This time I'm going to use the Rune Fang Steel for my silver. So we got the silver, we got the brown, we got the black, and we got the ivory. And then, so that's for the paints that we're going to use. Let me put them right there so you can see what they are. That's for the materials. Then we're going to use these two brushes here. Those are our base coloring brushes. And then you just need a factor pair, I'm not teaching math right now. You need a paint pair. And in my Discord, if you do !Discord, and you go to gmp102, there's some paint pairs there. And I chose red and green as one of the paint pairs you could have chose. Blue and yellow, and I'll tell you why I chose these colors momentarily. And blue and orange. Whoops, blue and orange. Okay, so those are the colors we're going to use. I have all of them. You only need one of them. Trying to make this nice and affordable each week so that by the end of the 4 weeks, you'll have all the paints you need, all the brushes you need, and you can start painting miniatures. All right. Let me moisten the brush. It's very warm down here, so things are going to dry really quickly on me today, so I'm going to work fast. All right, so that's about the brushes. I want to get into a little bit of color theory. I know that this is a painting stream, and we are going to paint, but I want to spend these first like half hour just explaining some things to you about color theory so that you can determine what colors you would want for your miniatures when you do them. So we have 3 colors we call the primary colors. That is the red, the yellow, and the blue. Those are primary colors. Okay, whoops. And I'll get those on paper in a second. But these are the primary colors. And they have their complements, and I'll show you how you get those complements momentarily. You may already know how to get those complements. But for those that don't, it's just a little bit of basic color theory. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to kind of put a yellow right here. And I'm not using a pointed brush. I'm just using some large brush that doesn't have a point. And I'm going to take a red, and I'll put that right up there. That's my red. And I'm going to do the blue. So these are the primary colors. And you can make all kinds of colors using these 3 colors right there. Okay. Decided to spend a little extra coin and bought a nicer pin vise. Nice. Feel like it's it's a tank. That's awesome. Very nice. Yeah, I have several pin vices as I have found. Usually I lose them, buy a new one, but lose them, buy a new one, but now I have a bunch of them. Okay, so what I'm going to do is if I was to mix the blue and the yellow, I would get what's called green. It would be an even mixture, so I'm just going to put it there. If I mixed the blue and the purple together and I did something in the middle, you would get something that looks sort of like this, which is purple. And then can you guess what you would get if you mixed yellow and red together? If you said orange, you would be correct. So there we go. Those are the colors that you can get if you mix the primaries. So let me just, where's my pen that I had? I did have a pen. There it is. I found it. All right. So this is yellow, which we call the primary color. This is red, which is a primary color, and blue, which is a primary color. All right. And then if I mix each one of these, it's a secondary color because I'm using two colors to do it, but we call them complementary colors. So this is green, and it complements to what's across from it. So green and red are complementary colors. The same thing with purple and yellow, and blue and orange. All right. Black and white are the same. You have white and you have black. They're complementary because they live on the opposite sides of the spectrum. And so with this, that's how I get the color pairs that I asked in the class that you choose. So you could choose one of these color pairs. And the reason you choose a color pair is because that's where you get the most contrast. So if I take a black and I paint white on it, I will get the most contrast. You'll see that white because the black is a big contrast from the white. Same thing with red and green, blue and orange, and red, or excuse me, purple and yellow. Now that doesn't mean you're not going to get a huge contrast if you put yellow on purple. There has to be some lightness and some darkness to it. So dark purple, light yellow, that's going to give you the highest contrast for those colors. Or you could do a light purple. If you go light purple to a dark yellow, you'll still get a pretty good contrast, but it may not be as bright going the other way around. So that's how you can do it, and I'll show you how all of this stuff works together, because I can mix all three of the primary colors and get a brown, which means that if I mix two complementary colors, I will get a brown. All right. And then if you highlight the brown, you'll eventually end up with flesh, and then we can start using colors to get our flesh tones to look a little different. You have darker flesh tones, you have zombie flesh tones, you have pale flesh tones. So that's what we can do with that. So just to give you a little idea, I will just take the three primary colors, red, and I will mix into it some yellow. And I will also mix in some blue. So I did it here because I'm going to just throw the blue into both of them and mix them all up. And we'll see what color we get. So hopefully we get the same amount in both things. So we're just going to kind of move that around. Now it may be a little too dark. but that is a brown. Just mixing it up in there. And then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add white. So here's some white. And if I add some white, and I just keep adding white, so here this kind of is looking a little on the red side. So if I take some green color, where did I do my green? If I take a little bit of green color and add it in, it's kind of hard to do this on paper because the paper is absorbing a lot of the paint. That may have been too much green. So I'll add a little bit of red. So if you add complementary color to it, it should come back to being sort of a beige color. It's not going to do it on paper. I have to, it just, because it's drying too fast. And what I need to do is keep it so it's not drying. But you can make a flesh tone by doing all three primary colors. It's just, this is, my paper is drying it, but that's how we can get different flesh tones if we want to use these colors. But I have a brown and I have a white and I have an ivory, so our flesh tone can be done using those colors. But I just wanted to show you a little bit of color theory before we get into this. Do you know about the session online color wheel? I know about the color wheel. I don't know if there's a specific college online about it, but I do know the color wheel, and I also know that paper is not the best way of mixing paint. Oh, well, thank you very much. Yeah, so I'll have to check that out. But I wanted to give a little color theory because I think it's important to know how to mix certain colors to get a desired effect. What's going to give you the best contrast. If you just keep adding black and white to everything, it's going to end up looking very gray. It's not going to have a nice tone to it. So you can always darken up purple by adding some blue. Or if you want it on the red side, you can do it that way. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to add some paint to this. I'm going to bring this out. Actually, let me zoom out. Let's see, can I zoom out here? Okay, let's bring this up just a little bit. We're going to get some color on here. So I'm going to get some of this white. And we're going to start base coloring so I can show you what I was talking about as far as using your brush. Using your brush is very key when it comes to painting and base coloring. Now I know that I said use a third of your brush, but because I am just getting paint into this area and I'm not using this as a base coloring brush, it's fine to dip that in there. So let's get so what's interesting is that I was in a stream yesterday and we were trying to determine how to make hot pink, and so we had to look up the mixture on how to make hot pink. And little did I know, and I learned something new, there is actual silver in hot pink to give it a nice sheen. So who knew? But it's just red and white with some silver, and then you keep adding red till you get your desired hotness of the pink. So And I'm just getting a bunch of, so I'm getting the white, the brown, the black. Let me get rid of this. Get rid of that so that you can see what I'm doing. And then we need some ivory and silver. We'll get some ivory in there. Looks like I'm going to have to revive some of my ivory. So I'm hoping that I can show you a bunch of different ways you can, once you learn how to base color, once you learn how, because it's all basically about the brush technique. If you can base color one spot, you'll be able to do it all over. It's very controlled, so I'm just going to show you how to control yourself, how to make sure that you keep a point going. And I will also give you a tip that if you use one of these, so I'm not using a wet palette today because I'm just basing. I'm just base coloring or color blocking, however you want to say it. That's all we're doing today. But we can use our black, we can use our white to throw some shades and highlights, which we'll be talking about next week. So I'm just going to get some blue. I probably should have put the red and the white in the middle, or the black and white in the middle, so it had enough room for all of this stuff. So I'm going to also talk about a little bit about the paint consistency and how you can determine if you have a good consistency for miniature painting. A lot of the acrylics are very thin, and you want to kind of keep them that way. You don't want thick paint. The reason you don't want thick paint is because, one, it'll show all the brush strokes, and two, it will cover up detail on the miniature, which we don't want to do. Have you busted out the airbrush and started tinkering yet? I have not started that process yet. That is coming. I need to get an open area on the bench to do that. I did, however, get to New York, and I pulled a lot of my airbrush equipment out of that house and brought it here, so it's gonna happen. It's gonna happen. An airbrush is another tool that I will be looking at using. It will help base coloring or priming, but that will be a lesson for another time. There's lots of tools out there, like they make pigments for paints that I haven't done yet. What am I missing here? The yellow. That's what I'm missing. Okay. I'll put the yellow here. Yellow is thin anyway, so I'm not too worried about that. And so to help me out here, I am just going to grab some acrylic medium and an eyedropper, if I remember where I did with it. I'm going to throw a drop of acrylic medium in all these to kind of help them stay loose. Okay. All right. So I have no real direction of to start painting, but I do have this to say. Actually, I lied. I do have a direction. When you paint miniatures that have metal pieces, you should probably do those metal pieces first. And so, let's see if See if I can get this in focus. I need to figure out which way to go to be focused. Actually, I think I need to get rid of this white paper, right? Oh, yes. That white paper makes it too dark. Why isn't that focusing? I had all of this stuff set up, and then I had a hiccup where it stopped my stream, so I had to restart. Now I have to redo all this. Thanks, Twitch. Way to make my life easy. Ay, ay, ay. Sorry. I apologize to everybody watching this. You don't need to see this. There we go. Let's zoom in on this a little bit more. All right. Apply. What's my white balance looking like? Of course you're going to do that. That's where I want you, right there. No. Well, all right. Oh, I see. I have to do this. Apply. Okay. Now we can see it. So here, let me do it with a brush. So here is some metal on his over his tunic, and on here we have some chainmail on him in the back, and then on his head. So the first thing I'm going to do is, if I have metal, I kind of want to paint that first, because it's hard to paint over metal. Or excuse me, it's hard to it's hard if you already have something painted. It's hard for you to fix metal. It's not hard to paint over it. It's just so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to kind of dry brush. Remember how we did that last week? So I'm going to take my little dry brush, and again, just make sure that you wipe it off so you don't see anything being painted on. So that looks good, but it is there, and so I will just lightly hit everything with it. And I could probably even do this with a white afterward to see where all my details are, but I think this will kind of help you see where certain things are. But I'm not really controlling where this is going. I'm just trying to get the metal on there, and then eventually I will touch it up later. So I'm just dry brushing his chainmail on now. See, dry brushing does have a chance to do it. So as I'm doing this, I just want to say that Talent 11B has been kind enough to send me videos of certain things, and I have put those in the Discord. So if you go to the gmp100 101 rather, and go to dry brushing, there's a couple videos all on dry brushing that you can use and see what people do with their dry brushing. And I know I'm getting this on his hand, or excuse me, his arms. I know it's on his axe, but that's kind of what we want, the dry brushing. I want to get rid of that those metal pieces when I'm base coloring. So I'll just dry brush them on here really quick. So this should be your first step. If you have to do metal pieces such as chainmail, you're going to probably want to dry brush first, Because if you try to dry brush afterward, you're going to end up hitting something that you already painted, and then it's going to be hard for you to fix that up. So, and I can even do the tops of his shoulders and his hat if I want to, but the reason why I chose this guy is because we can actually paint that stuff on. So there we go. We got a little bit of dry brushing on there. Now I know where his chainmail is. We don't want to rinse that off. Okay. Now the other thing that I can do is actually paint. Now this has been primed, by the way. This has been primed with gray. This guy has been primed with black. And so notice how that dry brushing really is contrasty with the black. I can get a contrast with the gray, but instead I'm going to show you how to also base color with this silver. You don't have to always dry brush the silver on. Whoops. I have to preface this first because I'm so on robot mode at the moment. So I'm going to take my two brushes and I'm going to say to myself, does it look like it's going to be a big brush? I got a lot of metal to do, or a small brush. You can't really go wrong here, but I think I'm going to stay with the big brush only because I've got a lot of stuff to do. Now, I only care about the tip of the brush. That's what I care about. If I'm just going to use the tip. So what I want to do is, again, I'm going to dip it in. So let me get it on camera here. I'm going to dip it in. Now see what happens. I don't know if you can see that. It's got a little bit of a bulb on it. So I'm going to just kind of get rid of that little ball so that I have only the tip. And notice that that's as much as I need right there for right now. And I'm just going to get in there and I'm just going to paint over it. And you want to be controlled. You want to be slow. And you just want to use the tip of that brush. See, it didn't look like there was a lot of paint on there, but look how much I've done so far. And it's just this movement. Now, you can go faster if you're confident, and if you're not, just take your time. And we'll come back to the metal tomorrow or next week, and I'll show you how you can wash it. But notice again, I'm just sticking in, but I still keep getting that little ball of paint there, so I just want to kind of wipe it off. And then there's paint on there. You don't need a lot of paint to move around. And that is the idea behind a base color. So I'm just doing the middle on first. So that's tip number one. Metal goes on before other stuff. The other thing you want to do is make sure that you go from the inside out. So before I do his helmet, I'll go in and do his face because that's on the most inner part of the model. But you're just using the tip of your brush to base color. So I know I've given a wealth of information, a lot of information. So I guess my question is, does anybody have any questions about brush use, color theory, or the act of coloring, or color blocking, I should say, in their model? So all I'm really doing is just controlling the movement of the tip of my brush. That's all I'm doing. There's no funny business. It's just straight paint. As long as it's nice and thin. Oh, that's probably what I should have showed you. How do you know when it's too thick? How do you know when it's too thin? Well, you'll know when it's too thick because you'll see brush strokes. And it'll be, you won't see the details. See, I still have detail in this. So this is a dry brush. This is painting on the metal. And then there's other things that we can do with that going forward. Okay. All right. So we'll go on him and we'll take care of his helmet. I'm going to paint on his helmet. So get rid of, make sure I have the tip of the brush. And I'm just going to kind of go through a little bit quicker just to get this. I might need to get my little glasses on. So I probably should have done his face before I did this helmet, but his helmet's metal, so you kind of have to make that distinction. Do I want to do the metal helmet before the face, or do I want the face before the metal helmet? And I think what I'll do is I'll get some of these shoulder pads going. I could do the shoulder pads in a different color or different metallic, but we're going to just stick with the silver. And I'm just kind of using the tip and I'm just controlling where it goes. So it's sort of like a color by number, except you have no numbers. You just have to be careful. It's got a little bit of a bulb on it, so we took it away. And I'm just going nice and easy. And then while this is drying, I'll show you what the consistency of a paint is so that you will know if it's good to base color with it, or if you need to thin it out, or if you have to use it as something else. Thin paint is not bad at all. It's a different use for it. I will bust out the airbrush soon. Okay, so how do I know if my paint is good enough to paint with? Well, let's go to the blue. So, no, let's go to my bone color. My bone color, I think, was a little chunky, if I'm not mistaken. Let's... I don't know if you can see, that's a pretty big bulb right there. So that's one way of figuring out if you have too thick a paint. The other way you can think of it as if you go on your fingernail, I don't know if you could see that, but as I paint, notice that that tip is pushing out paint off to the edge, and it looks like it's a little, looks like I got some ridges there. That means it's too thick. We don't want that. What we want is something that looks sort of like this. So let me take some of this green paint. So if I paint on my thumbnail here, if I look at it, I'm not seeing a brush stroke, but I'm also not seeing those ridges on the sides of my tip. That's the consistency you want right there. You don't want to see through it, because if I see through it, then it becomes too thin, such as, let's take some of this red here. This red we shouldn't see through, but if I paint it on, no, I didn't do a good job, did I? Let's see. Yeah. So if I paint like that, you can actually see through that red. Not a bad thing, but it's for a different use. So what you want to be able to paint with your tip so that you're not leaving tracks and you're not seeing through your paint job. Now some paints are just normally thin, so therefore you have to do a couple coats on it. I'm not saying that thin paint is bad, you just may have to do a couple more coats. All right. So where was I going? So we're going to take this guy that we dry brushed, and I'm going to do some brown. So I'm just going to kind of get this to a standard. And again, I'm just going to use, I think I'm using the, am I using the right brush? Yeah. So this one might be too big for me to use because that's a little area, so maybe we don't want to use that brush. So we'll go to my smaller brush. It's all about the size of the area you want to cover. I could have used that brush. The tip would have fit in, but I don't want to overpaint it. So again, you can't really see because it's a brown on brown, but you'll have to trust me that I'm only using a third of my brush just at the tip. Every time I push the paint, it will go into the belly, and each time I hit the model, I'll get some of that brown paint in that area. So we dip in about a third of the way, make sure that there's no bulb on the edge or on the tip, and you just paint. And you control it, and you just touch with the tip of the brush. You don't have to touch with the whole side of the brush. You just need to touch with the tip. And so that's the brown. And so we painted over some of that dry brush. Over here we'll do the same thing. See how the dry brush is on that handle? I'll do the same thing there. Just get this on the brush. And then we'll use this tip. And this is all it really is. As long as you learn the brush control, as long as you're nice and slow, you don't have to be super patient, but you don't want to just like start sticking tons of paint on here and then trying to smooth it out. You just want to put as much paint on the tip of the brush, and if you have to dip back in, you dip back in. It's only one color. We're not doing any kind of mixing. We're not doing any kind of glazing. We're not doing any kind of highlights or anything. We're just got one color on here, and eventually we'll get into shading and highlights. But I'm starting out dark, so that's the other thing, is you kind of want to go dark, and then you can paint brighter stuff over the darker stuff. So I guess I probably should have prefaced the whole thing on, hey, I should paint dark before I paint any light colors. So we'll get into that. So that's tip number 3. Start with dark colors and work up your way to the color you want. It'll create natural shades. So I'll probably end up highlighting this brown with some kind of woody brown, but leaving some of that darkness to kind of as a separator. And then we also have a little bit, and now see, this is what I was saying, we have this little tiny piece here. I'm probably not going to want to do that with a big brush. So I'm just going to kind of get in here and get in there. All right, let's see what we got here. New standard Orc Boy sculpts have just leaked. Oh, nice! Acrylic paint is transparent in nature. I'd rather a new painter start off thinner than normal and apply 3 coats to build a solid coat. Frustrated finding a sweet sport going thick and then ending up with a snitty gritty. Exactly. Exactly. Yeah, so thin paints, you know, they do work. Uh, and you just have to apply it more times, that's all. And so it's sort of a technique called glazing, which is not a bad skill to know. So, but that is a valid point that if you're going to err, if you're going to make errors on practice, you want to practice on thinning with thin paints rather than uh, erring on thick paints. It's really all about finding that detail. So I'm gonna get his gloves here. So I have some dry brush stuff, some silver on his gloves, but this will take that right out. I want to dry brush the silver before I started base coating, which I did, and that's what makes it look like this chainmail was dry brushed only, because I actually hid all the pieces that I oversprayed on, I guess, over dry brushed on. So I'm just kind of gonna have to get those glasses soon. So having a black miniature is very hard to see. All right. So I think that's his actual hand right there. That might actually be his hand. All right. That's all right. Brown works for flesh. So we'll get that. And that's the other thing, by them learning thinner first, the RA building fundamental understanding of glazing is essential skill in my opinion. Yeah, I mean, glazing, you can do a lot with glazing. And I'm gonna get this X silver. Uh, but it's just important to know. It's important to know all of these little basic, um, you know, like how to use the brush, how to get the colors on the brush, and then all of that other stuff just kind of comes through. Uh, so if you think that you're making mistakes by having your paint too thin, you're not. It's feeding itself into a brand new skill. You just want to make sure that basically all base coloring is making sure that you're painting enough so that you're not losing detail from the model that you don't want to lose, and you're not creating chalky, uh, grainy, or you're putting texture in where you don't want texture. So, and we could have went through and we could have zenithal highlighted this guy, and we could have done all of those um, thin layers to show you how the zenithal highlighting can help you in your lighting of a model. So, all right, let's get some other colors on here. Let's get some brown. Here's where you'll get to see some of that brown. I'm just working on all kinds of colors here, just showing people what you can do. I know that we're only sticking with a few colors, but we'll get some other colors in here. So I know I'm supposed to do the face, but let's make this a brown bow. Maybe we'll get a color right at the edge here. So again, making sure you've got the tip working for you. So I did that half of the bow with this small brush. Do I need to use a small brush? No. But I can, as long as you're using the tip. So again, I can use this brown, dipping about a third of the way through, and I can use this and do the same exact thing as I did with the other brush. But see, this is because I have more paint, I have more chance to just kind of make that flow. Nope, need more paint. All right. So you start here and you can just make it flow right down. Why isn't that flowing the way I want it to? Come on. Maybe I don't have enough paint on there. I think I have enough paint, but I didn't. There we go. So, and that's all there really is to base coloring or color blocking. It's just using the tip, making sure that you're using the right size brush for the area you want, and then you just kind of go nuts. So because of this, so just looking at this strap here, this belt, I'll do this brown, but I'm going to use a smaller brush because it kind of goes on the inside and it works its way to the outside. I've already done the metal work that's on the inside part of the model, and the reason I call it's on the inside part is because the belt goes over the metal part. So we'll just take this brown, again with the tip. It's a small enough tip. You only have to touch it really. And then we just go over here. All right, so I have to really get a third of this. I've been so conservative with my paint because I'm just showing you guys. Oh, let's see, there we go. So I'm just using the tip to get on the belt. See, I still got a load of paint on there because that's all in the belly. So that's the difference between dry brushing and base coloring. It's the tip of the brush, and you're just using a thin, not super thin, but a thin paint to base coat. But if it's too thin, you just have to reapply it. So what do they say? You can always put clothes on, but you can't take clothes off, or if you're too, I don't know, there's a saying out there that you can always do something one way and not the other. I guess you can always put layers on, keep yourself warm, but you can't take clothes off. all the you know, you can't keep taking clothes off to stay cool because eventually you run out of clothes. And that's the other thing by them learning. Oh, I already read that. And so there it is. So you just have to take a nice controlled movements and just kind of stay within the lines. And then I'll show you how to highlight all this by just using base colors. Since you started with a dark, we can get to a mid-tone and a highlight tone. Oh, we got some of the front here. We have a front belt here. So there's a lot of stuff that I want to show today with the base colors. But I can use these miniatures to do all kinds of stuff. I like this miniature, so when I was teaching this in person, this was one of the models that we would base color, and then I would show the shading, I would show the highlighting, and then I would also do the detailing work because this model has everything. And so that's kind of why I wanted to use it for this, because I want to kind of continue on with this as the weeks progress. I mean, he's even got hair that we can do dry brushing on. So there's a lot of neat things with this guy, but because I'm doing this on Twitch, I don't have the luxury of you having the same models I do, because a lot of my models are kind of old, and I haven't adapted the newer models to do what I wanted to do. However, if these classes kind of go in a direction where they're favorable, then since I have a 3D printer, I would be able to actually print out models that we can paint together. Sort of like make a little kit for the mini painting class. And then you can learn how, and practice on those models then instead of practicing on any of your own. All right. So now that I have this open, I'm going to work on some flesh tones. And so I'm just going to choose, I'm going to try to do this brown color with blue and orange. I don't know if it's going to work, because I don't have control of the primary colors. But blue and orange is are complementary. They're complementary colors, so I call them a nice color pair. I might need more orange, but we'll see. So trying to get a nice consistency of a brown color. And it's looking a little bit too blue. So we're going to need to add some orange to it. Again, adding the complementary colors together will kind of brown out the colors. And you get a higher contrast if one dries and you try to put the other one over it. So I could paint blue, and then I could paint, and once that dries, I could paint orange over it, and I would get a nice, huge contrast. So there's that. I'm going to try to take some of this white and see if I can mix it in there to get a little flesh tone going. All right. So that looks a little too gray. So I'm just going to dab a little bit of the red in there. See how this red comes out. Maybe a little too much red. But that's okay, because the complementary color to red is green. So we'll get some green in there. Try to get that brownish back. And then we'll get some white again. Back to where I started. Maybe I don't need that much red. Oh, there we go. That's what it was. You just kind of have to dab it in there. Alright, so we've got a flesh color. So, this is a ghoul from Games Workshop. If I wanted to do him like a zombie, and I just saw a video how you can wash the flesh on a zombie, which is kind of a cool thing in itself. But usually, if you want to make a zombie look kind of sickly and moldy, you would add some green. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add this red tone, this red flesh to the model. And so it's going to be too thin. So let's go back and get some. All right, now that I know how to do it, we're going to get some of this blue, get it in there. Some of this orange, get it in there. And just a bit of red. And mix all that up. And then we'll get some white in there. And a little bit more red. Not too much more. Just a little bit. I think it might be a little bit more white. All right, there we go. So this is a very thin paint. As you can tell, it's the gray is kind of bleeding through, so I'm gonna have to probably do another coat. This is just a large brush. Since I didn't really make a lot of that, I don't know if I'm going to be able to do this. All right. We're going to cheat. We're going to cheat. I'm just going to take my brown here, some white, get some red. Some white. All right. Still too thin, but not what I'm looking for. But I could take a flesh paint and just paint on there. I'm just trying to use the colors that I asked you guys to have. So I'm just gonna kind of base coat this with this color here, and then I'll work on mixing colors, because I wanted to show you that you can actually use green too. You can color it green and then put this flesh over that green, and it makes a nice green. It makes a nice sickly color uh, that we want for zombies. I know there was a question about zombie flesh somewhere down the road, so I thought I would show off the zombie flesh. This is actually a ghoul, but it's still under the same category, I think, of a zombie. Still gonna get that rotting flesh. Note to self, make sure that you always test what you're painting. Alright. Well, the other thing too is that I don't always put enough paint on the palette. Like so, if I really wanted to, I could put this much paint here, and then mix in the orange. I think the orange gets 2 of these. I think the blue is just 1. So look, I can do purple because I can mix those colors. I think there's 2 whites in here. So I think if I mix all this stuff up, there we go. Yeah, see? There you go. I just need to use actual paint to do it, instead of trying to just be so conservative. Just start mixing the paints up. All right, so there's the flesh tone. I made it because I put 2 complementary colors together, some red and some white. So this particular flesh tone is 2 oranges, 1 blue, 1 red, and 2 whites. You don't have to mix. You can probably just get flesh and put flesh right on here. As you can see, I'm not really being controlled with my movement because all I want to do is get the flesh tone on here. But when I do his big club, which is a big, huge dinosaur bone, I'll be more controlled when I do the same thing on his little diaper here. I'll be more controlled on doing that. So there we go. So there's my little fresh golem. Hey, Emersina, how are you? Just mixing some paints and doing some base colors. Oh, thank you for that shout out, Talon. Emersina is a mini painter. She was working on the hot pink last night. She was working on some of her space pirates. So we're just kind of doing some dry brush first, then we put some brown on here. We showed how to base color the silver. Same thing over here. I think you know what this model looks like. So that's where we are with that. So in honor of Emersina being here, her favorite color is purple. So I'll show you how you base color some purple. So I'm going to base color purple on this guy's clothes. since it's a large, I'm going to use the larger of the two base color brushes. Again, just because it's large doesn't mean that I'm going to use more paint. Just means that I need to do it a little bit more. So get rid of that ball so that I have the tip, and then you just kind of go in there and just nice large strokes, just bring it right straight down. Keep your paint nice and loose. If it's too thin, oops, get that bulb right off of there. Always work with the tip. You don't need to work with anything else. The tip will get into the crevices that you need to. The other thing about having your paint nice and loose is that when it hits these dark parts, your color is going to be dark, and when it hits this light stuff, it's going to be light. So you're going to get some natural lighting effects. And I have to be controlled because don't forget, when we dry brush the ghost, we dry brush this in a different color. How you doing? Oh, you're too. I appreciate. Too kind. You should know me by now. Again, just working with the tip. I'm only using a third of the brush because the rest of that purple is going into the belly so that I can keep going and painting for a long time. I'm not jamming my brush into the paint. We don't want any paint in the ferrule if we can help it. The higher up on the brush you go, the more paint has a chance to get into the ferrule. And if you're getting brushes that split, it means that paint is drying in the ferrule. And we don't want that. That tip is a very important tool for us. Just like a pitcher's arm in baseball is important to hit, or a pitcher in baseball, the important tool is his arm. If he doesn't have his arm, he can't pitch. So if you don't have a tip on your brush, you can't really paint details. You can still paint, it's just going to be awfully hard. But that's all we're doing. You dip in a third of the way, you wipe away the bulb, use the tip to control your paint, nice and slow. We're not dry brushing, we're painting. And we're getting base colors on here. I'm going to try to finish at least one of these. Next week we'll learn how to shade using washes, using paints. So if you start dark with your base color, and I guess I can work on the skeleton and show you because I know I just broke my own rule. I should be using a much larger brush for this, by the way. But that's all right. I wouldn't use a larger brush if I was going to do like multicolors or if I was going to do something with these wraps. Maybe these wraps are all individually placed. Because this is really just, I could use a larger brush to get all this purple on. And then if I wanted to, I could use this brush to get a lighter purple on. Which sounds like a plan. So we're just learning how to base color or block color the miniature. Wonder, should I do his hood a different color? Nah. Why make it complicated? We got so many colors out here. We're just using colors. I don't know what people are using out there. People probably aren't painting out there. Just fine. Oh, let's see. How are you doing? Let's see. You're very welcome. No jamming it in. Got it. That's right. Don't jam your tip in. You gotta be smart with it. That tip means everything. If you damage the tip, gonna have to get a new one. And the new ones are a pain. All right. Now how about if I'm actually on the camera while I'm doing this? I can't believe I'm doing this without my goggles. It's like I'm like sort of guessing. But I guess this on this piece doesn't really matter. All right. There you go. Hey, that doesn't look purple now, does it? What's good? Oh, I see. Hold on. Ooh. Does that change it? Yeah, see, that looks more purple. Oh, thank you. That's just a little base color. I haven't really done anything yet. Oh, probably help if I finished the hood up here. I think the white of the I think the white of my little paint thing was goofing up my camera. You know what? I'm gonna leave the inside of this black. Maybe I'm gonna leave it black. Hold on. I have to see, what did I do here? Yeah. I'm gonna leave this black. Alright. We're gonna let him dry. Oh, let's see. I think I have a little bit more of this flesh. I think I can salvage it. So again, one of the tips is work inside out. So I'm going to work on his face before I go anywhere else, because it's easier for me to get the face in there and then work the helmet. And all I'm doing is just dabbing with the tip, nice and controlled. The smaller the area, the more control, the slower I go, and more of that tip is getting used. And if I get any on the helmet, it's alright, because I will be able to paint over that. Very hard to paint a face after you've done the helmet, because then you're going to end up fixing a little bit more stuff. And the base color is just there. We don't want to lose any detail. So, and then I think we have his hands. I don't know if I have enough of this flesh left. I may have to cheat. Hold on. I got some flesh. So we'll get some hands in here. Again, I primed this guy gray. I know he comes in gray, but we had to prime him because I need this base color to stick. Although I think my flesh might be a little too thin because we ended up mixing it. And I think one of my paints might have been too thin when I mixed it. But I'm trying to stay on the inside parts so that when I have to, I can actually see. I know it's too thin because his thumb doesn't want to paint. Nothing wants to paint but what's on the inside of that. So if it's too thin and you make a mistake, you can wipe off your brush and then just stick the tip in there and I'll suck it right up. So let's see. Is there any way? See, this is completely dry. This is what I was afraid of tonight. It is so humid in the cellar right now in my basement that it's just sucking the moisture out of all of this paint. About that bass, about that bass. No treble. That's funny. All right. Well, here's what I'm going to do, folks. I've proven to you that I can actually make a flesh color. So I'm going to cheat. I'm actually going to use a flesh color because, well, I'm just not going to be able to do much with these dry paints. Like everything in here is almost dry, which is terrible. But I didn't want to use a wet palette because we're only base coating, or excuse me, base coloring, and plus I'm trying to keep it nice and affordable for everybody that tends to, or that wants to come here. And if it's a success, I'm going to work on getting other things I used to do when I did it in person. So you would technically have this model, you would have all the paints, you would have everything you needed to do the class. So maybe it's just me printing out miniatures and giving them in a little package like Bob Ross. I could be the Bob Ross of painting. All right, let's get this off the screen so that my color is truer. Because my color balance is designed for the background that's here and not the white background. All right. So all I'm doing, again, you can see, not a lot of paint on the, it's just on that tip. It's only on a third. And as I keep painting like this, eventually it'll go in the belly and I'll have some paint on there. But it's just a matter of using that tip. And the hands are small, and I know I'm using the bigger of the two brushes, but I kind of wanted a lot more of that paint for the flesh. And because it's a small spot, just got to take your time. The paint will get there. You just have to let it. There you go. All right. What are we at? 1:30. So I have a half hour. So I'm going to keep painting here. But I want to make sure that I get these in. So I have a lot of material on the plate today, which is talking to you about brush control and how to use the brush when you're base coloring. I wanted to talk to you a little bit about color theory and why we use purples and yellows, or we use reds and greens. Show you a little mixing of the flesh because I thought we could get some flesh going, which, you know, we have this little fleshy guy here. This is going to be my zombie. I'm going to work some green in here in a moment. But so there's just a lot. I had an ambitious class for you today, and you know, as long as you understand how to base color and block color, we're going to continue with these miniatures. I am, at least next week, but you can start bringing your own miniatures in and start painting those if you want to. I know that you probably have your own miniatures that you're practicing on, but I want to go over a little bit of I guess they're called hacks or some tricks of the trade that you can do to paint certain colors on. And one of those is painting white. So you have to realize one thing. 3D means three-dimensional. And I can sit here and draw a cube for you, which I'm going to do next week. But you have to imagine three sides of your cube. One is white, one is gray, one is black. That's how you make a three-dimensional figure. You have a midtone and two extremes, your dark color and your light color. Well, when you're doing white, well, white is the highlight color. So what do you do to combat that? Well, instead of painting white on your figure, one way you can base coat is to do like a very bright gray, which I'm looking for as I'm trying to stall as I'm looking for this bright gray. That's silver. Urgh. I know I have it somewhere. I had all of my colors out, ready to go. Now I can't find them. No. All right. Well, maybe I can just make one really quick. So here I'm just going to use this white. See, it's already dry. Look at that. Look at nothing's coming up. Nothing's coming up. All right. Well, we'll just do that, I guess. So there's a gray. This is probably too gray, but if I paint this, and you can technically make this a lot more white or a lot more brighter, and then you start base coloring white on here, which I'll do as soon as this dries, you can get yourself a white tunic with some shading. This is why I should have done the inside first. That's okay, I can paint over that. I just didn't want to hit that middle. And I also broke a cardinal rule, never mix with your brush that you're painting with. But because it's so humid in here, I'm just trying to work a little quick. All right. So right there, that's bright gray. I could have went brighter, but I didn't have, the white wasn't coming off. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to start painting white on these high areas pretty soon. Just to give you an idea of what that's going to look like. So we got to let that dry. So that's one way. That's one hack. And then, so you paint with the brightest gray that you possibly can. And even if you think you have the brightest gray, add a little bit more white to it, and it'll get even brighter. And then when you get into the white, you'll have that highlight of the cloak to be the brightest. So use your white as your brightest color, and to paint white, always go with a bright gray. So there is hack number one. The next thing is sometimes you want to paint a very bright color over a very dark color. And one thing you can do is paint it white. So, for example, on his crossbow, if I was going to keep this black, but I kind of wanted a bright, I don't know, like a, let's say a bright blue arrow, right? What I could do is take some white. I'm going to get out the little brush for this. Again, not a lot. And I could just paint this right here white. Oops. I was very conservative with my white. I could paint this white. Like so. And then I could paint it a bright color. We'll take this blue, which seems to not want to shake. Oh, look at that. We're going to have to fix that. Look at that. You know, that's thick paint, folks. That right there is thick paint. That's what I was talking about. See? We're going to fix that when we're done with the stream here. I don't even think I can use that. That's thick. All right. What else we got here? Oh, how about this one? This one seems all right. This is a pink. Oh, this is much better. Look at that. That's what I'm talking about. You have to identify your thick paint and the paint that you can use. And then all I'm going to do is just paint over that white like so. And now my pink is not dulled by the black. Nice and bright. So you can paint bright colors on dark just by painting black. Or excuse me, painting white. I don't know what I'm talking about. All right. So that's another fun way of doing it. Now, as far as black goes, if I'm going to do black, I will always do the darkest of grays because I want my black, just like the white is your highest point, which is your brightest. With black, I'll do the darkest gray I can get, and then I'll use a black to shade in so that the most recesses part of the black is black. Because if I start with black, then there's really nowhere for me to go to shade it. But we'll talk more about that next week. But let's say I want to give him some, I don't know, we want to give him some blonde hair. I don't think I can use any more of the colors on this wheel. They're all pretty gone. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, well, okay, I'll take my white and I'm going to paint the hair this white. So we just come down here. This is part of his beard. This is part of his beard. This is part of his beard. I think this is part of his beard. Okay. What color do you do? Let's see. Like what I do with the mountain stone color. Yes, exactly. Like you do with the mountain stone color. I remember that from last night. And so normally when I'm doing this, I probably would do a brown to do the blonde hair, but I wanted to show you that so if I do this, this is going to be too bright of a yellow, but doesn't matter because next week we're going to keep going with these miniatures and I'm going to show you how to tone all this stuff down, but that is exactly right. Just like you do with your stone, you're just kind of blocking everything down. So and there you go. So that's a little too bright, but just showing you that you can use your white to make colors pop instead of just trying to paint over the black. And notice as we keep doing this, we're not touching that chainmail that we dry brushed. And so eventually that chainmail will have um, it will have its own decor among all of the other colors that we're putting on here. So that's how we do that. All right. So that's a hack for doing bright colors on darkness. We use the white. Let me go to this here. Now, this is going to be a stark contrast. Obviously, there's other techniques to get a nice smooth blending. Some people end up using color blocking to help them find their values. But I could take this and, let's see, so right here would be some highlight color, and then I'll come up here with my white, and then it looks like over here is a highlight color. This looks like it comes up this way. Looks like we have a little highlight going on over here. This looks, so you just have to pick out those highlight colors for your cloak here. And then if I was really blending in, which we'll get into next week, I keep saying that, but now you're starting to see that I'm getting some highlight colors, and I'm leaving that shading in there, the folds, as my gray. So I kind of want to keep what you see as bright is my white. White equals bright. So, and this is just, all we're doing is color blocking. All we're doing is base coloring. I haven't done any shading. I haven't done any kind of edge highlighting. If I wanted to, I could just go ahead and dry brush this white if I wanted to. And because the white is so thin, I may have to do, as Talon said before, you just have to reapply it. But eventually, from a distance, it should look white with a little bit of texture to it. Hey, Cthulhu! How goes it, man? It's going good over here. Just giving a little class. It's the second installment of my mini painting class for new people and people that want to get into the hobby but were afraid. And we're just kind of showing them how to use the brush for base coloring their models. Obviously, there's all kinds of things that we can do and other techniques that we can apply, but these are my techniques, and if you want to use them, you may do so. I'm sure there's other ways of base coloring models. You know, the airbrush is a valid tool to do that. Some people like to airbrush base coats and then go in with other colors with a brush. So you just have to know that you need a point on the brush. So let me get my white paper back for a second. So we have a big brush and we have a medium brush and a small brush with points on them. And we just need to know and realize when to use it. So smaller areas will get the smaller brush, bigger areas will get the bigger brush. I base color all my models like crayons. Or with crayons, not like crayons. Oh boy. I can read. Hey, I did so much math over the week. I have tomorrow off, folks. Isn't that great? I have tomorrow off. It's gonna be grand. All right. So one thing I want to show you really quick. That's the wrong color. Is a purple. We don't want to use the brush that I mix with, or I don't want to paint with the brush I mix with. So I'm going to just take one part purple right there. That's my part purple. And I'm going to take one part white. I'm just going to mix them. Doing all right. I missed the first class, though. I know how to dry brush. Yeah. Dry brushing is cool. And if you join the Discord, you can always... Talon gave me some cool videos on dry brushing that I didn't even know people did that. I think it was all based on the dry brush itself, not the actual technique. But they did all kinds of crazy stuff with it, and you can do like quick OSL with it, and you can do. We did chainmail using a dry brush, so dry brush is kind of cool. It's a lost art. I'm just gonna mix these because I want a nice light color, and just want you to know that usually I mix a color that's already out there. So I could have cheated. Oh boy, what was that? I could have cheated and used Gene Stealer purple to make that purple I just did. But for you guys, I decided I was gonna mix. Okay, so I'm gonna take that brush we used before, that big brush, and take the white off the screen because it's messing up my color balance. And with a base coat, I can just go back over. You have to get rid of the bulb. So you want the point. Let's see, you want the point on the brush. You don't want the bulb of paint. And then you just kind of hit those raised edges. And you can actually make a shade from your darker purple just by painting a lighter purple over it. Although, oh God, I thought my basement would not have been this bad, but it is. Certainly does not like the acrylics tonight. So I'm just painting. Ugh, I can speak. Oh my gosh. I'm just painting, starting at the top because that's where the light was hitting it. And it's not, I know it looks like it's dry brushing because my paint wants to dry as soon as I get it into the brush. So bad. So bad. But I'm not really hitting it that hard. All these little creases here. I'm trying not to dry brush it. All right, let's see. If I add some water, let's see what happens. I think this is going to be too thin, though. It looks like it's going to be thin. Well, so you get a little glazing technique out of it. Oops. So I'm going to wipe this off. Dry off the brush. Stick the tip in there. Soak that right up. Yeah. All right. It's time to use the Gene Stealer Purple. Artist Opus. Yes. That is the name of the brush. Artist Opus. So there we go. I'll just use it out of the pot. That's what most people do. I should be using a wet palette down here. I just thought maybe I didn't have to. So we'll get some on the edge here. And we'll get some over here. So again, the tip, well, I should say the tips of base coating is don't jam your brush all the way in. You want about a third of the brush covered. So there you go, a third of the brush. I know it looks like half, but it's really a third. And then as you're painting, it will get into that belly of the brush. So just kind of paint it there, paint it here. Next week we'll fix this up so it kind of looks like the effect that you want it to. I'm just kind of painting the top pieces of the straps here. Trying to do a little bit quicker job than I would normally do. Can't type to save my life. But it's also the channel that's do all the dry brushing focus videos. Next week we'll learn about edge highlighting. So, and edge highlighting is another way of, it's just a way you can control your highlights. Dry brushing is still valid. So I know I cheated, not using the tip of the brush like I should, but just for time, because we had a little hiccup at the beginning. I don't know why Twitch cut me off, but I had to come back online. All right. So unfortunately with this flesh color, it's not going to be the best, but I'm going to take some green paint and I'm going to add it in to some of the flesh because I want to get a nice sickly looking flesh tone, and I can put it anywhere on the model that I usually like putting it where all the creases of the flesh are, but you put it down here. Next week I'm going to do the zombie flesh because I think it needs more washes than it needs base colors. I just wanted to see if I could do it, but I mean, it's working. Don't get me wrong. It's not like it's not working. It's just that by the time I get the paint mixed in there, it's dry. Like my paint is dry right here. Look, there's nothing there. Nothing there at all. That's my cellar for me. You can see some of it. But green is the color you want to go with if you want like disease and rotting and moldy, and it's what I usually use for my zombies. Let's see if I can get it on the back here. Well, remember that red and green are complementary colors, so when you stick them together, you're going to get a brownish color. And if you want it more green, we just put more green in there. And what that does is it really brings out the redness of the flesh. Because together, if they're both dry, then they bring out the big contrast. But if you mix them, they're going to get the brownish color. So like if I put the green on here in his eyes and on his mouth, you should start seeing that pink color pop more with the screen because they're complementary colors. You guys ever pick up the new "Oh Brother, Where Art Thou"? It's basically retelling Steve. Oh, I heard about that. Yeah, with George Clooney. Yeah. So, I know I'm rushing this because we're almost out of time. But anybody that has questions at all, please don't hesitate to ask. Again, these classes are designed to be a paint along. They're designed to ask questions along the way, and I will provide as much detail or help as I possibly can. Yeah, I probably should have started out with the green and worked my way up to the flesh. But so what I'm going to do is I'm going to use some of this brown. Well, where is it? Use this brown color here. Paint some of this club, which is actually a dinosaur bone. Again, I don't use the entire brush to do it. I only use the tip. Let the paint go in the belly. You wouldn't think that you could get a lot of paint, but you really want to make sure you're not covering up details, important details, and texture of the model. So again, you can't see it with the brown, but I'm taking that bulb of paint off. I have the point. There's only a little bit of paint on the brush, but as I move it around, all that paint gets into the belly, and then I can just keep using the brush to spread this around, keeping it at a thin layer of paint. My paint isn't thin, but I want the thin layer of paint so that I can actually see any details that I want to highlight, or I want to shade in that I want to shade in later. So, and I know I'm dipping into the pot quite a bit. Problem is that I have two dehumidifiers going, and it's not really making a dent in this humid basement. So I can still paint. It's just I need to apply a little bit more paint than normal. Or if I had a wet palette. I should be using a wet palette, but I don't expect anybody to have a wet palette that's beginning right now. But maybe if you're looking to paint miniatures and you want to know what to buy, you should probably get yourself a wet palette. Alright, so there you go. Club is done, brown, and because it's already dry, we'll go right to an extreme highlight color. Still using the big brush, but that's as much paint as I need. And I'm just going to paint right on here. It's a little thin, so we'll just do it again. If it's thin, do it again. If it's thin, do it again. That will be my motto. And we'll continue doing this over here. And just like that, we'll keep going on with this. I'll even give you a little bonus look. I think this might be a, I don't know what kind of bone this is. It'd probably help if I was wearing my special goggles, but again, we're just base coloring it, and this is even a little too thick than what I'm used to. And you can see that because you can see my brush strokes. It's not clean. I can get away with it because it's a bone, but if you're doing something smooth like cloth or armor or a sword, you kind of want to use something that's not so thick. Anyway, so you can see how thick that paint is. I really need to water it down. But that's what happens when you try to use that's what happens when you try to use thick paint to base coat. You're going to get those lines, you're going to get that texture, that chalkiness. So I'm going to try to fix that now by just using some acrylic medium, thinning out the paint. Maybe if I showed it on camera. So right there, that's what I'm going to use. Let's see. Is that what I'm going to use? Nope, that's too thin. Get some more paint in there. All right. And so what I've done is, because of that thick paint, I actually made some texture on this bone. And it's not a good thing, because it's not covering evenly. But I'm glad I made the mistake, because now you get to see the mistake, and now you know what not to do. Don't use a thick paint to base color, because you're going to end up covering details. Luckily, I didn't cover up any details, so I will have a good time fixing this. But if I was covering up some details, it would be very, very bad. You want to paint on your texture, or you want to control where your textures are. You don't want the paint to do it for you. So that's my lesson for you. I'm glad I made the mistake. Or did I? So all right. And see how that paint is just going into the belly? See, you're going to naturally get to that point. So you don't need to start at that point. The whole trick of keeping brushes to last is to make sure the paint never gets into that ferrule. And if it does get into ferrule, you got to clean your brushes. Now, cleaning your brushes, you should probably do it. I would say you should probably clean your brushes at least twice a month. But if you're one of those people that keep getting paint in your ferrules or your brushes keep splitting, you're probably going to want to try to brush them after every painting that you do. If you paint every day, then you might want to try to do it at least once a week. So anyway, well, I hope I've given a lot of information. I hope that I've given some information to you that people didn't know. We'll continue working on all of these guys. I might just paint the base colors off stream, or maybe you just want to see more base colors next week. But we'll talk about shading and highlighting down the road, and we'll get into some zombie flesh. But so there is another couple tricks I'm just gonna shout out here, and that is if you want a brighter yellow, paint white first, then get your yellow on there. If you want more of a tannish yellow, like for example blonde hair, which I should have probably did on the dwarf, start with a brown. Start with a tan, and then work your way to yellow, because that yellow will blend in with that tan color quite a bit. Um, Sometimes if I'm and this is going to happen in a couple weeks when I show you guys how to do some detailing, but for belts and buckles, start with a very dark brown or dark black, and then work your way with a brighter color. So a tan or a white, not a white, I'm sorry, tan or a like a yellow or a red. You can get some separation with the black and the dark brown of your belts, your straps, and things of that nature. So those are some other tricks that you can do with base colors. And yeah, so sorry we didn't get all the way to the zombie flesh. I was kind of hoping we could do that, but mixing paints today was not going to be in the cards. I can't do it down here. So unless anybody doesn't have any questions, again, as I said at the start of the stream, there is no raids, so you guys are more than welcome to go anywhere else that you want to at the end of this stream, or you can do it now if you want. Exclamation point Discord gets you into my server. You can go into the university and look at all the tips and techniques that are in there. A lot of them have been given to us by our friend Talon 11B. Also, there's some videos in the dry brushing. I will also put some updated photos in the base coloring, color blocking, and next week we will get into all kinds of shading and all kinds of edge highlighting to really make our minis pop. And get those colors to come right out there, so when you're looking at them on the table from a distance, they still have the same intensity as a lot of blending and stuff like that goes. So next week is all the shading and highlighting. We did a little bit of that today with this guy. If you start with a dark base color and you work your way up, this is really bugging me, so I gotta stop. I gotta pause for just a second. I'm sorry, guys. I have to pause for 2 seconds. It doesn't seem like it wants to do any. Oh, configure video. Here we go. I'm going to fix this. I'm going to fix this so you could see what I'm doing. That's the color right there. I'm not special. Apply. Okay. There we go. That's the color they're supposed to be, not that bluish stuff. Now we can get some color. Look at that. I don't know what we were doing before, but so anyway, if you start with a dark base color and work your way up through the and just putting more base colors lighter and lighter, you can get that natural shading. You can get that natural highlighting, edge highlighting. You can even dry brush. So once you get the two colors on there, you can dry brush a lighter color on. Bada bang, bada boom. You've got your you've got your three levels. So 3D miniatures needs three levels. So next week we take our base coats and we start doing some edging, and I'll show you what you do for edge highlighting, and I'll also show you what you do for shading. And the only new material that you're going to need for next week is probably another it's probably another pairing. So whether you chose green red this week, you can choose blue orange next week, but but you do need a lining brush. And what is a lining brush? I will show you what a lining brush is. A lining brush is nothing more than a brush that doesn't have a belly to it. So I know I have one. I know I have one. Just let me see if I can actually show this. So, all right. So here's a brush. This has a belly to it. So it has a tip and it fattens out to a belly. This, let's see. Let's see if I can do it this way. See that? There's no belly on that small brush. That's a lining brush. We're going to line with something that looks like that. So again, let's do this. See that? That's got a belly. See how I have a tip and then it widens out in the middle? See this? This doesn't widen. That's a liner brush. And that's what I use to edge highlight with. So if you can get one of those, you could still do it with a regular brush, but you're going to want something smaller than your small brush, your smaller base brush. So you're probably going to want something that looks kind of like in this area, this ballpark. So you can do it without a liner brush. It's easier with a liner brush, but there's the small base color brush. And look how much smaller these brushes are. So you gotta get a small brush if you want to do the edge highlight. It's still got to come up with a point though. Liner brushes have a point, and so do your base color. So the point is the tip of the brush is a super important thing. And for lining, I feel like a liner brush is just easier because I don't have to be at such a big angle just to keep the tip on the surface. But that's all next week. Last chance for questions. I went over time only because I had a glitch and I wanted to make sure I get the full 2-hour thing. I'm a big fan of the 18 rounds. Holds just the right amount of moisture for edge highlight for my taste. Yeah, let's see, what is this? This just says 0 IMAX. I don't think it tells me if it's an 18-0. I know I have an 18-0 somewhere. I just have to find it. What is this one? That's a 1. So I'll find an 18-0 for next week, and then we could show you what those look like as well, as Alan said. But I did want to say, I know we're 15 minutes over. The question, anybody have any questions before I end the stream? I feel like I just keep talking and I don't answer any questions from people. and I don't give you time to ask questions. But I think base coloring is just kind of once you learn how to use the brush, base coloring is kind of a simple task. PSA: Michaels is doing sale on artist loft brushes next week. Really? Ooh. I wonder if our participating Michaels is doing it. There you go, folks. Go to Michaels if you have one in your area. All right. 15% off. I may have to go check that out. I may have to go check that out. Do you know if Michaels has sable or sable brushes? They must have sable brushes. I think Hobby Lobby has sable brushes, so Michaels probably should have them as well. All right, I want to thank everybody. I want to thank the amazing Talon 11B for coming in and moderating and taking care of all the shout outs and taking care of all of any questions that I may have missed. He's an absolute dream to have in your stream. So if you're not following him, can you give yourself a shout out, Talon? I know you probably don't stream, but look for that guy. Oh, they have Windsor Newton Stables? Ooh, I might have to go then if it's 15% off. I might try the Windsors. I've always wanted to get Windsors, but I haven't pulled the trigger on that. So again, Emersina Cthulhu, thank you for stopping in. Thank you for chatting around. Any of my lurkers out there that were just kind of checking me out and seeing what I was doing, peace to you guys. And thank you for those lurks. I always appreciate it. Again, Thursday nights, 7 to 9. Hopefully next week we will be on Uncut. And we're going to talk about shades and highlights. I just have to get some kind of syllabus. We're going to stick with these guys. We're going to get these guys started and finished, I promise. I don't have to look for any of these. Plus, I can go back to any of the dry brush ones we did. We've got a lot of miniatures we started here. So, all right, folks. Have a great night. Have a great weekend. For those of you that are following me, I will be on tomorrow night, 10 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, 7 o'clock Pacific Standard Time. And we're going to continue on with my little gnome. I'll show you what I did. I don't know if Talon was there, but I zenithal dry brushed him, zenithal highlighted him, and I just glazed. These are all glazes. Everything I've glazed. I didn't put any kind of paint yet on it. So that's what we're doing tomorrow. We're going to do a lot of the detail work. This guy is tiny. This guy is tiny. Look how tiny he is. Super tiny. But that's what we're working on tomorrow. And if we happen to finish him, we have some other stuff to do. So I will be on tomorrow, 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Have a great night, ladies and gentlemen, and I'll make sure all of the channel point redeems are back on, and I will also make sure my raids are back on. No raiding tonight because of the class, so find your favorite streamer and go give them some love. Good night. Love you all.